November 24, 1971. A man buys a plane ticket under a fake name. He boards a commercial flight from Portland to Seattle. Halfway through the flight, he passes a note to a flight attendant. The note says he has a bomb. He demands $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. And here's the part that will keep you up at night. They gave it to him. The plane lands. The passengers are released. The money is handed over. And then, this man straps on a parachute, opens the rear door of a moving aircraft at 10,000 feet in the middle of a freezing rainstorm. And jumps. Into the darkness. Into the night. And is never seen again. No body was ever found. No confirmed identity was ever established. And most of the $200,000 has never been recovered. This is the story of D.B. Cooper, the only unsolved air piracy case in American aviation history. And over 50 years later, the FBI still doesn't know who he was. Think about that. Let's go back to that November afternoon. Portland International Airport. 1971. A man approaches the Northwest Orient Airlines ticket counter and purchases a one-way ticket to Seattle. He pays cash. He gives his name as Dan Cooper. He is described as calm. Well-dressed. Dark suit, black tie, white shirt. He is carrying a briefcase. He boards Flight 305. A Boeing 727 with 36 passengers and 6 crew members. He orders a bourbon and soda. He pays for his drink. He is polite. And then, about 30 minutes into the flight, he leans over to a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner and hands her a folded note. Florence assumes it is a phone number from an admiring passenger. She slips it into her pocket without reading it. The man leans over again and quietly says, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Florence reads the note. It says he has a bomb in his briefcase. He wants $200,000 in unmarked bills. He wants 4 parachutes, 2 primary, 2 reserve. He wants a fuel truck ready at Seattle Airport. And he wants no tricks. Florence goes to the cockpit. The pilots contact Seattle Air Traffic Control. The FBI is notified. And a decision is made: comply with his demands. The plane circles Seattle for 2 hours while the FBI scrambles to gather $200,000 in cash. The serial numbers of every bill are photographed before being handed over. The plane lands at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The passengers are released. The money and parachutes are delivered. And then the man who calls himself Dan Cooper, with $200,000 in a bag strapped to his body, orders the plane to take off again. Destination: Mexico City. But Dan Cooper never makes it to Mexico City. Because somewhere over the forests of southwestern Washington state, at approximately 8:13 p.m., he opens the rear door of the aircraft and jumps into the darkness. The crew feels a jolt. They check the monitors. The rear stairs are down. And Dan Cooper is gone. The FBI launched one of the largest manhunts in American history. Hundreds of agents. Military search teams. Civilian volunteers. They combed through thousands of acres of dense Pacific Northwest forest. They found nothing. No parachute. No body. No briefcase. No trace of Dan Cooper whatsoever. The investigation was given a code name: Norjack, Northwest Hijacking. Over the next several years, the FBI interviewed over 800 suspects. They chased leads across the United States, Canada, and Europe. All of them led nowhere. Then in 1980, a remarkable discovery. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sand on the banks of the Columbia River, about 40 miles from Portland. He found a small bundle of rotting, decaying paper. When the FBI analyzed it, the serial numbers matched. $5,800 of D.B. Cooper's ransom money. It was the only physical evidence ever recovered. But it raised more questions than it answered. How did the money end up there miles from where Cooper jumped? Was he dead? Did he bury it and never come back? Or did the river carry it there over years? No one knows. The FBI officially suspended active investigation of the case in 2016 after 45 years, citing a need to redirect resources. But the case remains officially unsolved to this day. Here is what makes this case truly extraordinary. In over 50 years of investigation, no one has been definitively identified as D.B. Cooper. But the profile that investigators built is fascinating. This man was calm under pressure. He showed no fear, no nervousness. He made polite conversation with the flight crew even while threatening their lives with a bomb. He knew aircraft. He specifically requested the Boeing 727, one of the very few commercial aircraft with an aft staircase that could be opened in flight. This was not a coincidence. He knew parachutes. He correctly identified which of the 4 parachutes given to him were functional. He asked the pilots to fly at a specific low altitude and airspeed, conditions consistent with someone who understood the physics of a parachute jump. This was not an amateur. Investigators believe he had military or special forces training, likely with parachutes. Some believe he may have worked in the aviation industry. Over the decades, dozens of suspects were named. One of the most compelling was a man named Richard McCoy, a former Green Beret and skydiving expert who pulled off an almost identical hijacking just 4 months after D.B. Cooper, also demanding money and jumping from a plane. He was caught, convicted, and then escaped from prison before being killed in a shootout with FBI agents. Was McCoy actually D.B. Cooper? The FBI officially says no. But many investigators are not so sure. Another compelling suspect was L.D. Cooper, identified in 2011 by his own niece, who claimed her uncle had confessed to the crime on his deathbed. DNA evidence was tested, but was inconclusive. The truth is, we still don't know. The most widely held theory among FBI investigators is that D.B. Cooper simply did not survive. He jumped at night, in a freezing rainstorm, over dense Pacific Northwest wilderness, wearing only a business suit and loafers, no survival gear whatsoever. The temperature at that altitude was approximately -7 degrees Celsius. Under this theory, Cooper landed somewhere in the vast wilderness, injured or frozen, and his body was consumed by the forest over decades, leaving almost no trace behind. The discovery of the money on the river bank supports this theory. If Cooper had survived, he almost certainly would have retrieved and spent his money. But here is the problem with this theory: no body, no parachute, no clothing, no bones have ever been found. In 50-plus years of searching, the forest keeps its secrets well. Theory 2, he survived and disappeared. A significant number of researchers believe Cooper planned his escape meticulously and pulled it off perfectly. Under this theory, Cooper was a highly trained professional who knew exactly what he was doing. He had a pre-planned landing zone, possibly with an accomplice waiting. He buried or disposed of the money over time, explaining why only a small amount was ever found, and why it appeared naturally weathered rather than deliberately hidden. He then simply blended back into ordinary life, becoming a regular citizen who took his secret to the grave. Under this theory, D.B. Cooper may have lived a long, quiet, unremarkable life. Somewhere in America. Quietly smiling to himself every time the story made the news. The D.B. Cooper case has become something extraordinary in American culture. He is the only person in history to have committed air piracy against a commercial aircraft in the United States and never been caught or identified. Hundreds of amateur investigators continue working the case to this day. Entire communities, websites, and annual conventions are dedicated to solving it. In 2016, a woman named Lisa Lepsy came forward claiming her father was D.B. Cooper. DNA testing was conducted. Inconclusive. In 2022, a new research team announced they had identified a primary suspect using advanced forensic analysis of the ransom bills and parachute components. The FBI reviewed their findings. No arrest was made. The case remains open. The money, all but $5,800 of it, remains missing. And D.B. Cooper, whoever he was, remains the most successful and mysterious hijacker in history. Here is what the D.B. Cooper case teaches us. In a world of surveillance cameras, DNA databases, facial recognition, and digital footprints, One man, with a briefcase, a note, and a parachute. Completely outsmarted an entire government. For over 50 years. Maybe he died in that dark forest on a cold November night, his money scattered by the river. Or maybe sometime an old man sat in a quiet room, watching the news coverage of his own unsolved case, and allowed himself a small, private smile. We will likely never know which one is true. And perhaps that is exactly how he planned it. If this story kept you thinking, like this video and subscribe for more of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. The truth is out there. We just have to dig deep enough to find it.